Yesterday's explosive testimony from former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson came with seeming bombshell after bombshell about January 6th, but also about President Trump himself. But now questions have been raised over the credibility of at least one of Hutchinson's most damning claims. Now, she testified that, among other things, that she heard Trump acknowledge he knew the January 6th rioters were armed and didn't care because they weren't out to hurt him, that she was told Trump exploded and threw dishes after then Attorney General Barr gave an interview stating that there was no systemic voter fraud, that she was told Trump did not seem to express any alarm when told the mob was marching to the Capitol, and that she saw a, quote, lack of reaction in Chief Mark Meadows when he learned of the impending riot, that she heard Meadows say Trump thought the rioters were justified in their chants of hang Mike Pence. The revelations from this Republican aide creating major shockwaves throughout many conservative circles, like this editorial from the generally very conservative Washington Examiner, quote, Trump proven unfit for power again, or this headline from the National Review, Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony against Trump is devastating. Even those on Fox News taking Trump to task over the claims.
At a minimum, this is the leader of the free world, and he is clearly unhinged.
Based on what I heard today, leaving incitement aside, you know, it's a federal crime to intimidate or assault members of Congress. And I continue to think the important testimony that came out today was just how much information President Trump had about how armed to the teeth this crowd was, and his reaction that, well, what's the problem with that? They're not coming for me.
This testimony is, first of all, stunning, because we haven't heard this. Two, it's compelling because of her proximity to power. All of these people directly having conversations with her.
But out of all of the revelations to come out of Hutchinson's testimony, one of the most devastating for Trump personally was that the former president had lunged at and assaulted his Secret Service security detail for refusing to drive him to the Capitol after his speech so Trump could join his supporters there. This was Hutchinson testifying about what she claims she was told by then White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations Tony Ornato in a room with Robert Engel, the Secret Service agent in charge on January 6th.
So once the president had gotten into the vehicle with Bobby, he thought that they were going up to the Capitol, and when Bobby had relayed to him, we're not, we don't have the assets to do it, it's not secure, we're going back to the West Wing. The president had very strong, a very angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now. To which Bobby responded, sir, we have to go back to the West Wing. The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol. Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Ornato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
But sources close to her within the Secret Service are telling NewsNation and other major news outlets that their agents, including Engel, are prepared to testify the key parts of that account didn't happen. That while they will apparently say Trump was upset that he couldn't go to the Capitol, that he never lunged or assaulted anyone. Sources tell NewsNation the agents will testify under oath, if required, that Trump lunging at the lead agent, trying to grab the wheel, didn't happen. In a public statement, the Secret Service saying, quote, the United States Secret Service has been cooperating with the Select Committee since its inception and will continue to do so, including by responding on the record to the committee regarding the new allegations surfaced in yesterday's testimony. Still, here's Congressman Jamie Raskin, a member of the House Select Committee, responding to whether Hutchinson's account of what happened in the car is credible.
Congressman, what Willie was asking, obviously, you heard the question, was just whether you've heard the testimony from Mr. Engel, you've heard other testimony surrounding that event. Are you confident that by the end there will be corroborating testimony that corroborates that story?
Well, I've certainly heard nothing to contradict it, and it's consistent with multiple accounts we have of the president being incensed and outraged that, armed people were being kept out of the crowd, and also that he was unable to participate in the march Mussolini style on the way to the Capitol so he could go and presumably seize the presidency.
Incensed and outraged, though, different from assault and battery. Now, Hutchinson's attorney today releasing this statement on her behalf saying Ms. Hutchinson stands by all the testimony she provided yesterday under oath to the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. But regardless of whether that incident actually occurred, the accounts from both the Secret Service and Hutchinson indicate that Trump wanted to go up to the Capitol itself. And that, by the way, is inconsistent with what Mark Meadows claimed in his book. So this leaves me with two questions. One, how significant is the discrepancy? And two, what impact is all of this having within the Republican Party? Joining me now is Hugo Lowell, who has been covering the hearings for The Guardian, and GOP strategist Jim Dornan, who was an advisor on President Trump's exploratory committee. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, Hugo, let me start with you. The Secret Service, including Bobby Engel, has already testified behind closed doors to the committee. Do we know what happened? Should we presume he was never specifically asked about the steering wheel incident?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that's still unclear, right? I mean, we know Engel and Ornato both spoke to the Select Committee. First of all, we don't know if they actually testified. I mean, the Select Committee has had several different types of depositions. They've had kind of informal proffer kind of interviews where witnesses will kind of give the Select Committee broadly what they know. And then there's also been recorded straightforward depositions where things are filmed and the entire deposition is conducted under oath. We don't know under what circumstances Engel and Ornato spoke to the Select Committee. So I think that's the first point. But, Cassidy Hutchinson yesterday was testifying about what she had heard secondhand. And so the committee privately has told us, and I guess and other reporters, that there may well be a discrepancy insofar as when the story came from Ornato to Cassidy Hutchinson, then maybe things were embellished or things were lost in translation. But the key point is, I think neither Ornato or the Secret Service or Hutchinson or the committee is denying that there was some sort of altercation that took place since the former president wanted to go to the Capitol so badly.
And what are we expecting the Secret Service, these agents, to now testify?
Well, it's not exactly clear either, because the Secret Service is saying, of course, that they'll have Engel and Ornato testify to that effect of what they're saying. But that's just the superiors at the Secret Service saying that we don't actually know, how this might take place or whether the Select Committee will pull them into a formal deposition now and try and corroborate Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. I think the point to note is Cassidy Hutchinson's account of this seems to have come in the last few days, the last sort of weeks, when she changed lawyer and was suddenly more cooperative with the Select Committee's investigation. We believe, according to our reporting in the timeline, that happened after the Select Committee spoke to Ornato and Engel. So it's possible that they never went back to the Secret Service to corroborate that part of our testimony. It's just not clear at this point.
Interesting. All right. So I want to think about the political impact here. I'm not interested in the impact it's having on Democrats. Obviously, they want to celebrate this stuff. I'm interested in the impact on Republicans. Jim, I know you've been talking to people in Trump's orbit. What's the response been?
The funny thing is, one of them said this is probably the best ad that Ron DeSantis could ever imagine making. So there's a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of very upset people, a lot of worried people. This may be a death knell to Trump and his presidential aspirations in 2024. Frankly, I think a lot of people may be relieved by this and showing Trump in a very unhinged manner. And I think that it's making people and you just showed the Examiner, who's been a staunch Trump supporter over the years, calling into question whether he's fit for office or not. So I think generally there's a big sigh of relief, at least among the political operative class here in D.C.
A death knell for Trump's 2020 aspirations is a big statement, Jim. I mean, you have people like Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham going on Fox in primetime and still defending the president and attacking Cassidy Hutchinson. Is that going to be the position that people in the Trump world are going to take. And it sounds like you're saying you don't think that people are going to galvanize behind that position.
I don't think they are. I mean, Hannity and Ingram are well-known Trump defenders. They'll do anything he wants them to do. I'm sure there have been conversations between them and Trump last night and what their shows were going to say last night and probably again tonight. So, you know, it doesn't hold water. I mean, there are guys out there actually running races, not at the presidential level necessarily, but at the Senate and the House level. We're saying, do we want this guy at the top of our ticket and having to defend these actions? And the answer, I think, down the line is going to be no. I mean, there may be a few holdouts, but the bottom line is that this is about winning, and Trump cannot win. I think the only guy Trump could beat is maybe Biden.
Well, you mentioned this is an ad for Ron DeSantis. On Friday, we're going to do a full hour on the Trump versus DeSantis. I know you're going to join us for that. Jim Dornan and Hugo Lowell, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.